Why did humans start wearing clothes? Imagine waking up on an African plain 150,000 years ago. The sun hasn't fully risen. The air is cool, but not freezing. Around you, people are already moving. Someone is sharpening a stone blade. Children are chasing each other through the grass. A small fire is fading into smoke. Nobody owns a wardrobe. Nobody worries about matching colors. Nobody has ever heard of fashion. Yet somewhere in this distant world, one of the most important inventions in human history is about to appear. Not a wheel, not farming, not writing, clothing. Today, putting on clothes is so automatic that it barely feels like a decision. Before leaving home, you choose a shirt, shoes, maybe a jacket if the weather looks cold. It takes minutes, but every morning, without realizing it, you repeat a habit that began tens of thousands of years ago. The question is, why did humans ever start wearing clothes in the first place? After all, almost every other large animal survives perfectly well without them. Lions never stitched together a fur coat. Chimpanzees don't wrap themselves in leaves. Even polar bears, living in temperatures that would kill a human in hours, never needed to invent sweaters. So why did we? The obvious answer seems simple. Cold. Once humans began leaving Africa and entering colder parts of Europe and Asia, clothing would have become essential for survival. That explanation makes sense, but surprisingly, it isn't the whole story. In fact, genetic evidence suggests humans were probably wearing some form of clothing long before they reached the icy north, which raises a much stranger question. If our ancestors weren't freezing yet, what exactly were they covering themselves for? To understand the answer, you first have to understand something unusual about the human body. Compared to nearly every other mammal on Earth, humans are almost naked. Chimpanzees are covered in thick hair. Gorillas are covered. Bears, wolves, horses, deer, even elephants all carry natural protection over their skin. Humans don't. Scientists believe this happened gradually as our ancestors adapted to life on open grasslands. Instead of waiting in forests for food, they began traveling long distances under the hot African sun. Running for hours generated enormous amounts of body heat. A thick coat of fur became less of an advantage and more of a dangerous burden. Overheating could be fatal. Natural selection favored something much more effective: sweat. Humans evolved millions of sweat glands, allowing the body to cool itself incredibly efficiently. It isn't glamorous, but it helped transform humans into one of the best long-distance runners on Earth. Your ancestors didn't always outrun prey. Sometimes they simply refused to stop chasing until the exhausted animal collapsed from heat. Few mammals can match that ability. Losing fur made this possible. But every advantage comes with a price. Once the sun disappeared, the body cooled quickly. A cool evening became uncomfortable. A cold winter became deadly. Eventually, people needed another layer. Not one they were born with, one they could make. For decades, researchers assumed clothing appeared only after humans entered colder climates. Then, an unexpected source completely changed the timeline. Not fossils, not cave paintings, not ancient tools, lice. It sounds ridiculous. Yet these tiny parasites became one of archaeology's greatest detectives. Humans host two closely related species of lice. Head lice spend their entire lives in human hair. Body lice live almost exclusively inside clothing, hiding in seams and folds before crawling onto the skin to feed. Here's the fascinating part. Body lice cannot survive without clothing. If clothing disappears, so do they. Geneticists compared the DNA of both species to estimate when body lice split from their head louse ancestors. The answer was astonishing, somewhere between roughly 80,000 and 170,000 years ago. In other words, by the time body lice evolved, humans must already have been wearing clothes regularly enough to create an entirely new habitat. An annoying parasite accidentally preserved one of the oldest clues about human civilization. Sometimes evolution leaves evidence in the strangest places, but if clothing existed before humans spread into freezing environments, warmth probably wasn't the original reason. Protection may have come first. Think about daily life in prehistoric Africa. Sharp grasses sliced exposed skin, thorn bushes tore arms and legs, mosquitoes spread disease. The tropical sun burned uncovered shoulders. Even a simple animal hide draped across the body could reduce injuries, prevent infections, and make long journeys more comfortable. Sometimes the first invention isn't about luxury, it's simply about making tomorrow a little easier than today. Yet humans rarely stop at pure practicality. Give people a useful object, and sooner or later they'll turn it into a symbol. That's exactly what seems to have happened with clothing. Long before woven fabrics existed, humans were already decorating themselves. Archaeologists have discovered pieces of red ochre used for body painting dating back nearly 200,000 years. Decoration came before fashion. People weren't just surviving, they were communicating. A painted body could signal identity, experience, maturity, or belonging. Once animal skins entered the picture, those same ideas naturally expanded. Not every hide looked the same, not every animal carried the same meaning. Wearing the skin of a dangerous predator may have conveyed courage. A carefully prepared cloak might have reflected skill. Certain ornaments could identify family, group, or status. Without writing, clothing became another language, one that everyone understood without speaking a word. This instinct still exists today. A business suit says something, a military uniform says something else. Sports jerseys, wedding dresses, and graduation gowns all communicate identity before anyone opens their mouth. Your ancestors were already doing the same thing, only their wardrobe looked very different. For thousands of years, clothing remained relatively simple. Animal skins wrapped around the body, leather tied together with sinew. Nothing elegant, just functional. Then another remarkable invention appeared, the sewing needle. Around 50,000 years ago, archaeologists began finding finely crafted bone needles with tiny eyes drilled through them. These weren't simple sharpened bones, they were precision tools. Making one required planning, patience, and incredible craftsmanship. With needles came fitted clothing. Garments could finally wrap closely around the body instead of hanging loosely over the shoulders. That small improvement made a massive difference. Better fitting clothing trapped warm air. It blocked icy winds. It protected fingers, wrists, and neck, places where heat escapes quickly. In harsh climates, good tailoring wasn't about appearance. It was the difference between surviving winter and dying before spring. Modern humans weren't alone in discovering this. Neanderthals also processed animal hides with remarkable skill. Stone scrapers, hide-working tools, and archaeological evidence suggest they understood leather technology long before they encountered Homo sapiens. Then there were the Denisovans, another ancient human group identified from surprisingly few fossils. Inside Denisova Cave in Siberia, researchers uncovered both sophisticated needles and carefully crafted ornaments. Even people we know almost nothing about appear to have decorated their clothing. Different human species reach similar solutions independently. That tells us something important. Our clothing wasn't a cultural accident. It may have been an inevitable response for intelligent, highly social primates living in unpredictable environments. As climate changed, clothing became even more essential. During the Ice Age, temperatures dropped dramatically. Huge glaciers expanded across much of the northern hemisphere. Resources became scarce. Human populations shrank. Some scientists believe our species came dangerously close to extinction. Groups that mastered clothing technology held an enormous advantage. Layered hides, well-stitched seams, knowledge passed from parents to children. These weren't simply useful skills, they became survival technologies. Eventually, humans spread into Europe, Siberia, and beyond, not because evolution suddenly gave us thicker fur, but because we built our own. Our ancestors created a second skin, one they could repair, improve, and adapt whenever conditions changed. Later, another revolution quietly transformed clothing forever. Plant fibers. Instead of relying only on animal hides, humans learned to twist grasses, flax, and other fibers into thread. Thread became fabric. Fabric became textiles. Unlike leather, woven cloth was lighter, easier to carry, and could be produced without hunting. Even more fascinating, some of the oldest surviving fibers were already dyed in different colors. Color served no survival purpose, meaning did. People wanted their clothing to express something. By the time agriculture appeared around 10,000 years ago, textile production had become one of humanity's most valuable technologies. Entire civilizations traded linen, wool, and eventually silk across continents. Empires grew wealthy because of cloth. Trade routes connected distant cultures through textiles. Wars were fought over access to luxury fabrics. An invention that may have begun as simple protection eventually reshaped economics, politics, and culture. So why did humans start wearing clothes? The answer isn't a single moment, it was a journey. First came protection from the environment, then social identity, later survival during colder climates. Finally, clothing evolved into art, status, tradition, and self-expression. Today, every outfit still tells a story. Whether you realize it or not, your clothes communicate who you are, where you belong, and sometimes who you hope to become. That instinct stretches back more than 100,000 years. Every morning when you decide what to wear, you're participating in one of humanity's oldest traditions. The materials have changed, the styles have changed, the meaning has only grown stronger. Perhaps that's the strangest part of all. Humans didn't simply invent clothing to survive nature. We transformed it into something that shapes identity itself. A shirt can signal confidence, a uniform can inspire trust, a ceremonial robe can represent faith, a simple piece of fabric can change how others see you and even how you see yourself. Your ancestors could never have imagined fashion shows, luxury brands, or overflowing closets. But they would probably recognize the feeling behind them, the desire to belong, to stand out, to tell a story without speaking. And maybe that's why clothing became uniquely human. Not because we were the coldest animal, but because we became the first species that wrapped ideas around its body as carefully as it wrapped skin.